Well, let's go ahead and get started. This is Doug Crisafulli. Welcome to our low-code solution spotlight with Sustaira. And quickly on the agenda, I'm Doug Crisafulli. I'm a North America ISV account manager, and I'll be handing this over to Rory O'Sullivan, who's the global sustainability lead for Sustaira. So we'll hand it over to him in just a minute. And then we'll go into a little Q&A after Rory takes over and does a demo and goes through the solution. A little bit about us. Mendix has been around for coming up on 20 years. We have 1,700 employees, 4,000 customers, and over 300,000 apps created with Mendix. In 2018, we were acquired by Siemens, so now we have probably one of the largest companies in the world and very well recognized through all Forrester and Gartner. And last year on the low-code landscape, we were considered one of the leaders and put in there by Gartner, a well-earned position. And a little bit about us. Being now part of Siemens, the investment has been huge. We are expanding our product on a very regular basis on the virtual world and also in the automation world. So as they grow, we've been growing right along with them. And a little bit about what Mendix does. It reduces development cost. So you can actually do development about 5 times faster at the beginning, but also as you start to expand solutions that are built on Mendix, you can start to make upgrades and changes very quickly throughout any time and keep your software up to date. And a little bit about adaptability. It's one of the highlights of what you can do with this Mendix and also with our ISV program. It allows you to really make solutions that you can resell and sell as a SaaS solution, but also allows you to customize it for each account that you have. So you can really expand, be very flexible for your customers. And so if you have any questions around that, feel free to call. It's actually a great technical piece that adds to our business piece on the ISV, which is a royalties based, which is not a large upfront charge. But, as we really said, I really wanted to hand this over to Sustaira because that's who it's really about today. So with that said, Rory, it's all yours.
Thank you, Doug. I'm just bringing up my slides now, and then we'll get started. So today, thank you, Doug, for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here to speak to you about a little bit about what we do at Sustaira to try and accelerate sustainability impact at our customers and build upon really the foundation that Mendix has in that flexibility, that scalability, and how, in essence, that helps our customers, sustainability leaders, etc., accelerate what they do. Introducing a little bit about Sustaira. So we're built on Mendix, and really that scalability, that flexibility is what enables us to do what we do much better than I believe anyone else, but also really fill a niche requirements of our customers. Also, thanks to that relationship with Siemens, we're able to connect to other systems very easily. We've got those pre-built connectors, again, thanks to Mendix. That means that we can really meet the needs of our customers sustainability-wise very quickly with a kind of proven backing behind us and a reliability that's of growing importance. So what is it we do? At our core, Sustaira has a library of sustainability apps. Maybe that's carbon accounting, maybe that's to help with reporting, maybe it's to help with doing your materiality assessment. That's what we have at our core. But it's much more than that. We have a broad portfolio of also implementation services and partners to help with specific needs and requirements here, there, or everywhere. And what that means is that those core apps can be very quickly translated to your organization, to your niche requirements. Maybe it's a Malaysian reporting requirement, very interesting, very niche. And we also have partners who can help with that local knowledge. Another thing is ESG consulting and advisory services. It's not just the big players anymore who need to do sustainability. It's also smaller companies as well. So that means that they might not have the knowledge in-house. They might not have the capabilities in-house to do their carbon accounting. And implementing the app is just one part of that puzzle. You also need to have and guiding through the process of how to do sustainability well. Um, Ultimately, the needs of sustainability leaders is what we want to help, and we want to help them accelerate their impact and overcome their challenges in doing that wherever in the world. And again, this is partly thanks to Mendix that we can deploy also anywhere in the world and meet those really individual and interesting requirements, whether it's in North America, Southeast Asia, Europe, etc. The challenges of sustainability are changing. The challenges of those leaders who we are trying to help are also changing, and that means we need to change with them. Part of the reason why these challenges are changing is because the why of sustainability is changing. It used to be 20, 30 years ago, you hear a lot about greenwashing now. Nobody heard about it back then because it's just what everyone did. Not everyone, but a lot of people did in order to further themselves sustainability. It's all about how can we market this? How can we share? And the reason for that is that ultimately it's all about enterprise value and it's all about impact. But then we started to see a changing why, which is also this efficiency gains and these changes in how companies approach sustainability. So if you can do more with less, for example, we're measuring energy to calculate our carbon emissions. Now we also realize that if we lower our energy use, we lower our energy costs, for example. Or maybe you saw a couple of years ago, suddenly toilet paper rolls got smaller. That's actually a change which enabled a small change in how thick the toilet paper roll was meant they could fit a lot more on the truck, which means an efficiency gain, but it also means less emissions. The big one nowadays, though, is of course regulatory compliance and risk reduction. CSRD, we're all hearing about that, the new SEC rules, a lot of reporting requirements are needed by companies and by organizations to meet their obligations under law in order to function. And at the same time, we see this growing shift in stakeholder demands. Maybe pension funds saying we only invest in sustainable companies. You see these big investment firms saying we only invest in sustainable companies. We do ESG screening, but also you see these niche customer demands. Customers now are willing to pay more for a sustainable product. And so with this changing why and this expanding value case to how to do sustainability, the pressure is being felt much more on sustainability leaders, but also on the entire organization. Whether that's on sales and marketing to be more honest and truthful and give more insight into their sustainability claims, but also on manufacturing processes to find more efficiency gains, on engineering departments to implement those changes. IT and operations also are playing a big part in this, in providing that data infrastructure, because ultimately everything is coming down to data now. Everything is coming down to, okay, you want to claim your sustainable company, you want to file these reports, you want to make these efficiency gains, you need the data to back it up. And of course, that's producing a lot of noise and a lot of struggle for sustainability leaders. Ultimately, these struggles can be kind of summarized in this sort of pain cycle where you're not able to get the resources to improve your data processes because ultimately the resources to improve your data processes are reliant on being able to prove value, on being reliant on being able to prove if you give me X FTE, I'll be able to do Y, which will be able to show you this gain in this many years time. So what it leads to, and this is in my past, previously, I've been there. I've kind of tried to run sustainability, and collecting data is very, very challenging. And ultimately, a lot of sustainability leaders, what they spend a lot of their time doing is just going between different departments saying, I need X data, or I need you to do X change, or, you know, it's just a lot of data gathering. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is provide certainty and provide clarity to your reporting people, to your marketing people. This is what we've got to be doing. So how do we change this? How do we break the cycle? Whether it's because of siloed data, maybe it's because of legacy systems, maybe you can't spend all your time doing manual data transfer. How do we break it? That's what we're trying to do at Sustaira, building upon the foundation of what Mendix has provided for us, which is low-code building blocks. We're seeing a little bit of, at the moment, two ends of the market for sustainability apps for these platforms for software, which helps with sustainability. And that's on one end, it's out-of-the-box solutions. They're cheap, they're quick, they work straight away, but it's square peg, round hole sort of problem. In that, yes, you can implement them quickly and they work straight away. Maybe it's a carbon accounting solution, but you still got to do a lot of legwork gathering that data or training people on how to use the system. And ultimately, that can lead to a lot of, well, long-term failure or solving one problem but not the whole picture. The other end of the spectrum is custom-built solutions, which is in essence where you're paying Rolls-Royce money for a sort of bicycle-shaped problem. And yes, it will solve the problem, but yeah, the expense is high, the resource required is high, and it'll solve the problem temporarily. A year from now, the reporting requirements change, your data processes change, your business changes, and you need a solution which can ultimately scale and adapt as those change along with you. If you know in 10 years' time, you're going to have to be reporting on X, Y, and Z, but next year you only need to report on X. Why would you implement a solution next year for X, Y, and Z? And that's a little bit of what we're trying to do. So with Sustaira, you can implement, yeah, a building block approach to your sustainability apps where you can slowly scale it over time. If you imagine it like Lego blocks, each one of our apps can work independently or they could work as part of a big picture. And additionally, thanks to Mendix and thanks to how we approach sustainability and the distinct features of our apps is if you've got an ERP system, if you've got a great sustainability disclosure system or carbon accounting system already, but they're not speaking to each other, or different departments which aren't speaking to each other, we can help to kind of bridge that gap. If you imagine this Lego analogy going a little bit further, there's also a flexibility and a scalability to it, depending on what your problems are. Maybe it's just two sections of your data streams which aren't speaking to each other and that gap needs bridging. We can build that gap. Or maybe you need the whole house building. You need everything from your data acquisition to your goals, to your strategy, to your reporting, all building out. You can do it all with the building block approach of apps. Now, how does that look and how does that look in practice? Because right now we're talking in analogies, we're talking theoretically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and take you through a little bit of our approach and then show you a demo because ultimately, seeing is believing. And so here's, how we approach things, or we like to anyway. Typically, we like to give a bird's eye picture. So sustainability, your apps should follow your processes and you've got your goals. So we've got apps for goals and KPI tracking. We can align it with the SDGs and other frameworks. Also materiality assessments. In order to do CSRD reporting, you're having to do a materiality assessment as well. And that's where your goals should begin. That's where your data journey should begin, is identifying what is important. Then the ultimately data aggregation, your actions, etc., 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 all the way through to reporting and onwards. The other thing is that we can match this up to your other data sources. Maybe you've got an ERP system, maybe you've got a PLM system, or your HR data. That's of growing importance as well for DEI disclosures, for your gender pay gap disclosures. We can match up and automate that data collection together with an audit trail so that ultimately you don't have to pay 60 people to sit there and copy the data over manually to your report, but it can be live. And that's not just for reporting purposes, it's also for management purposes. So you can see in live time and tell and communicate with your organization how you're doing. A lot of time, and this is a big problem with sustainability in general, is it's kind of seen as this black box on, am I doing all right? I don't know. I give you the data, I give you my sustainability data, and I have no idea how I'm doing. Maybe it's to the sustainability department, maybe it's to a parent company, maybe it's to a subsidiary company. Everyone speaks different languages. So being able to aggregate all the data that's necessary and view all the KPIs in one place is very important. Another thing that we like to approach with is so-called multi-tenancy. So if you imagine a holding company or a parent company has got lots of different subsidiaries, what those subsidiaries do with the sustainability data is going to be different. And a lot of approaches is one size fits all. But even within one company, you can have different needs and different requirements for reporting and data aggregation. And then likewise, between different locations as well, you'll have different reporting lines. So maybe one location uses gas heating, one location uses district heating, one location doesn't use heating at all because it's in a very cold part of the world. You shouldn't be forcing to collect gas data from a location that doesn't use gas. And so we like to be able to adapt and build specially to your unique requirements, and out the gate, that is possible with our apps. Ultimately, then that all feeds up to the parent company, who can see clearly how all of their subsidiaries are doing, who can assign ownership as well of all those subsidiaries to users. So that's another thing that's very important, is user management and change. A lot of people who sustainability leaders are interacting with are maybe 20, 30 years in their role in their company. They're great risk managers, they're great facility managers. Sustainability is new for them, and having to kind of suddenly force them to do things a new way and suddenly force them to collect data that they've never had to collect before is a change. And a lot of people approach that with kind of a hammer approach rather than a carrot approach, but it needs to be a mixture of both. And it also needs to bring them with them on that journey. So not overcomplicating the dashboard for them, not overcomplicating those interfaces is important. Ultimately, all of these come together in the apps. Now, I will switch over to show you our app solutions. Please feel free to add any questions or anything that you want to, and we can visit it later. And I will switch over now to my other screen and show you our demo environment. So here you go. This is the landing page of Sustaira. And for most people, it won't be like this. This is because this is our demo environment. These are all of our core apps, but each user will see only what's relevant to them. We can personalize it and gamify it as well to help with that engagement. And always click Sustaira, click back here, and you come back to the launch pad. Here we go. One of the major apps that we like to do is projects and KPIs. Now, if you imagine this, it's kind of like seeing all of your goals in one place, seeing your progress towards them all in one place, and so that you can understand, A, how am I doing on my high-level goals, but B, maybe where do I need to pay more or less attention? You can also align them with external factors such as sustainable development goals or whatever factor is relevant for your region, for your company, for your industry. If we dig a bit deep now into one of these goals, so this one, for example, reducing water for landscaping. Now, each goal will have a number of sub KPIs measured underneath it, so we can measure them qualitatively or quantitatively. Maybe it's automatically via APIs as well. This is where those connections to your existing features and your existing platforms come in. You can also see who's responsible for each of these. And that's kind of given that bird's eye picture on, we're doing not as well on this one. Maybe I need to go and speak to Jeroen about it. But overall, those are the action items. And this is where the kind of workflow management, this is where the project management comes into place, is then being able to measure and assign tasks to individuals as well, not just responsibility. So you can dig through, see the progress on this one. Now, this client that we originally built this for wanted this level of granularity, but ultimately it can be adjusted and made as granular as you like, or changed according to your needs. Creating projects as well is very easy. Now, if we come out, if you remember all of those subtasks when I go over to the next app, which is Sustainability Planner, you're seeing them all again here. These are all the tasks. These are all the projects that are ongoing. And what we can do, this is across complex organizations where you have lots of different departments having to do different things in order to reach one goal, is you can build up a picture and make a planner on what you're actually doing to meet your goal. And maybe then see if all of these different departments do these things, how are we going to get towards our goal? The investment required, the annual savings required, and ultimately then also make adjustments for changing electricity rates, maybe changing inflation rates, and then see and share those scenarios, those plans with the people who ultimately need to do them in a user-friendly way. The next step, and this is, I think, core for a lot of people in sustainability, is carbon accounting. So our carbon accounting app is very unique and very, well, not unique, but very particularly useful in a few ways. Number one is you can manage data entries both on a location basis and give assignments, so who's responsible for each location, and then see all, let's say with the New York office, all the features that we've got to track for the New York office. Maybe it's late, maybe it's not. But you can also do it per category, and that's useful because maybe some things are measured and responsible, let's say utility data. Each person in New York, in Boston, in Amsterdam has to go and measure that themselves. And some things are done maybe on one go. Let's say business travel. That might be managed by an internal department that's doing the business travel for all the offices. And so being able to give that flexibility to an organization and match it to how they are collecting this data. Another thing you might see from these graphs, something's looking a bit off. We have a full audit trail which collects every single entry for every single change that's made by whom and when. Strange. That's what it is. That's what's causing that graph to go a bit odd. So now we go through, and that audit trail can be exported and it can be shared with third-party auditors, with third-party verifiers, and for things like CSRD, this is of growing importance. So if we come back out now, we go to DEI. Also of growing importance is being able to monitor and measure how you are progressing against your diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And maybe that's monitoring your gender pay gap. Maybe it's monitoring how diverse you are as an employer. You can go through and see then also more deep data in a second on actually understanding compensation by gender. A lot of companies are struggling now with measuring even their gender pay gap. And this is a sort of dashboard and display that we can give them quite quickly, and matching it up to maybe if they've got Workday or other payroll suppliers, we can create automations and APIs to automatically show them those insights. Another thing, one more, yeah, I can do a few more things, I think, yes. Another thing is disclosures. So I spoke a little bit about the changing why, and one of those whys is disclosures. A few years ago, it was all about GRI, which was voluntary largely reporting. Now, CSRD is the big picture. Now, CSRD is complex for a number of reasons, which I won't get into now, but a huge part of it is just the massive quantity of disclosures which companies are having to provide in order to meet their reporting requirements. What we can do via our disclosures app, and this works for a lot of other reporting frameworks as well, we've got the same sort of frameworks loaded in, is walk them through and ultimately match them up to their other systems, to their carbon accounting app, to their wherever, and automatically gather that data with its audit trail. And the other thing is being able to assign. So even within one subsection of ESRS, so the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, there will be various different subsections and yada, yada, yada. Maybe some of it's being done by HR. Maybe some of it's being done by finance. Maybe some of it's being done by risk even. And all of the replies, everything that you do needs to be some sort of supported, because ultimately your assurer is going to come in when you're doing CSRD reporting and also just CO2 reporting. You've got to have third-party verification for most, well, I'd say most good sustainability claims on your CO2 report will need that third-party verification. So being able to provide notes like saying, oh, we don't have this data because of X, Y, and Z for your assurer to be able to understand what's going on. The other thing is materiality. So some things will be material, some things won't. Here, you can set it manually here, but we also have a materiality assessment app, which I will show you in a minute. But first of all, I'll finish off in disclosures. These are all the items. So as a kind of super user, I could see this is how we're progressing on each one of them, who owns what, and yada, yada. But on a, let's say I'm from HR, I've only got a few bits from HR to go. I can see the things that are assigned to me and that I need to do, mark it for approval, approved, done. So a lot of companies now are having to not just gather data from their own companies, but they're having to gather it from their suppliers. They're having to gather it from their portfolio. Let's say they're a bank and they've got a lot of financial customers that them to gather data from, but also from their suppliers. So what we can do is build this very quickly is an engagement portal. So you're able to send surveys, and this is what, let's say, a supplier might see or a customer might see who you're trying to gather data from. You can see all the questionnaires that have been sent to you, but it's a tit for tat. Customers aren't just going to give things for nothing. They also want to be able to get something for themselves. And so what we can do is help our customers be able to give insights to their customers or to their suppliers to actually gather that engagement and force it through so that ultimately you're not losing people. You got to take people on a journey with you. You got to give them something. If you're asking somebody to measure something that they've never measured before, you got to be able to give them a portal which is A, user friendly, and B, tells them what they want to hear. So now if you go through, the questionnaires could be very, very detailed, but it also could be very simple. You could also provide for your customers, let's say materiality assessment, that view of what are the important issues to you based on a few simple questions. So that's something that we can do. And now if I just go back and I go over to here, there's another thing that we can do, which is just float all this on top of other data lakes. And that's really those connections between the integrations that are needed between what you have already. And that's extending the existing solutions that you have. So here, this is all just giving a visualization of data that's been ingested from elsewhere and this is all data that the company already had. So this is data which they already had, they had access to, but they didn't have insights and they didn't have the right people in the right places being able to easily see what's the breakdown of scope data. Also, how's this data then used for benchmarking? And so what we can do is combine the internal data and combine public data. So this is live from MSNI, MSCI, live from Affinitive, and provide benchmarking data against your competitors or whomever, and do more with less with regard to data. Forecasting as well, and applying, let's say, more advanced analytics in the background. So these were your emissions last year. This is where you need to be. So what's our gap between what we plan on doing, where we need to be, and ultimately, so if we want to reach net zero by 2050, we need to be there by 2030, but we're forecast to be here by business as usual. So then this is how much we're going to have to ultimately offset. And a lot of companies now, they are investing a lot into long-term offsetting options. And so being able to provide them an image in 10 years' time, this is what it'll probably cost you. And a lot of people don't have an insight. They know they've committed to net zero 2030, but they have no clue what that eventual cost is going to be. And carbon emission offsets are likely to go up to maybe $200 a ton. A few years ago, they were $20 a ton. So there's going to be a huge, huge change in the costing of emissions as well into the future. One last thing. So you see the lovely green up here. You've seen the lovely red up here, orange. That's just a little taste of how far we can take ultimately the UI changes. And this is what I'm coming down to on ultimately guiding people, taking them by the hand and being able to help integrating these changes into your company. People don't like change, people like what's familiar. So this is what we've done, is matching it up with the client colors, with the client requests to make it feel at home, and ultimately giving them a display of the things that matter to them in a way that their employees are going to recognize as being important. This is very, very important, and a lot of customers don't, a lot of, not our customers, but a lot of companies out there approaching sustainability don't realize the impact of organizational change and the impact of trying to force something through that you've not had to approach before. And maybe it's with your suppliers, maybe it's with your customers, but small changes like the UI, making it the look and feel at home for Siemens in this case, is very, very important. So that's the final thing. I think I've gone into it quite quickly, and I've just given you the quick and dirty tour of Sustaira, how we approach things. There's a lot more to show you, a lot more apps. We have custom built apps as well, but it's the low code building approach. So these are the building blocks. How far we take it from there is depending on the needs of the customer. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're just interested in accelerating impact and helping our customers do as much as they need to do as quickly as they need to do it. Thank you, Doug. I'll hand back over to you, and hopefully, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Rory. We do have a question over in the Q&A section. Can you see that?
Yes. I would like to hear some ballpark figures of required investment cost and throughput time for implementing Sustaira in, say, an organization with, say, a dozen offices in different countries. So costing is really depending on your needs. So we have a pretty flexible approach to costing, but ultimately, if you just want one of the apps, that's going to be pretty easy. So if it's just carbon accounting and out the gate, you don't have many particular requirements, a dozen offices, so we don't cost per office at all. It's per environment and per user. So a dozen offices is very easy. You could probably do it very quickly and ballpark. If you go to our website, you can see some of the ballpark package costs, but we can be flexible below that. So I don't want to give too specific right now because ultimately I'm not sure which apps you would need. But let's say if it was just carbon accounting, reporting, projects and KPIs, maybe between 20 and 30K.
Okay, perfect. And if anybody else has any other questions, please ask them. But a couple other questions I have come up is how can Sustaira help organizations meet complex reporting requirements?
Yeah, so what I've shown today is kind of CSRD, which is pretty complex, but you get a lot more complex in sustainability reporting and also a lot more complex with regard to that data gathering. And so if we talk about maybe something, for example, like CBAM, the European Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, that reporting side of things is relatively simple. The complicated side of things comes with communicating with your suppliers. And what we can do is one of two things. We could do it the quick way, which is, just a quick supplier kind of portal for doing surveying, or you could do it the, shall we say, harder way or the proper way, which is building an engagement portal, which is a little bit of what I showed you. And that's just one example. Let's say if you're looking at a really unique reporting requirement in, let's say, Malaysia or in South America from one of those countries, is we can build, I showed you the CSRD one, we could build a template to that particular requirement for you very, very quickly, and that will guide your organization through. And then we can match it up to the other apps or to your own internal systems to help gathering that data and supporting the audit trail. The other thing on the reporting side, one last thing, is user types. So we can have a user type for auditing, and that audit user will only be able to view everything. They won't be able to change anything. So the auditors you don't have to give them loads and loads of printouts and Excel and PDF files. Everything is saved and secured in one environment. Also for your employees to be able to upload documentation and proof, as I mentioned, throughout the way.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And if you notice, we have another question that came in from over in the Q&A section.
Oh, yes. What existing infrastructure existed before you were introduced to Mendix, or was this something that came to you build once realizing that it could be complemented by low code, and in this case, Mendix? So our founder and CEO, Vincent, he set up Sustaira and he built it together with a group of developers starting a couple of years ago. And I think he's had a long relationship with Mendix, so it was always, I think, going to be Mendix. But for him, he was looking at a few things, and sustainability seemed like an area where before Sustaira and before Mendix, it's as I was discussing, there was a lot of out-of-the-box areas and particularly kind of focused software providers. Maybe they're just doing environmental health and safety software. Maybe they're just doing kind of carbon accounting software, and they all exist within their own little niches. And then there was kind of the built from scratch hard code. Maybe you go to IBM and you get them to make you, IBM is a very respectful company, but you get them to build you a from scratch massive solution. those are the only real options you have for you. But thanks to Mendix and the low code kind of adaptability, you didn't need to go and write a massive kind of connector or have somebody sat down. Ultimately, that's what existed before, was you get somebody to do it manually, or you build an API from scratch. Now we can get one straight out the gate that you can kind of connect together those niche systems and extend them or add them to your overall big architecture. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that answered the question, Stefan.
Excellent. Perfect. And so, and one of the lot of questions was, what are the biggest challenges facing companies with regard to sustainability data at the moment?
Yeah, so it's really varied. I'd say one of the biggest ones is you can do it the right way or you can do it the quick way, and there's not really a middle ground. So if you look at, everyone's mostly familiar with carbon accounting, so measuring your carbon output. The biggest challenge is being sure of it. You can build a model or you can guess the carbon emissions of a company quite quickly, but the variance is big where the true number actually is. You can do it the long way, the complicated way, and get that variance smaller. And that's what a lot of companies are being forced to do now with new reporting requirements. But ultimately, there's not really a sure kind of clear-cut way of doing that. So there's no rule book. The financial world has had decades to develop practices, processes, rules, universal language for how to do financial reporting, whereas sustainability is kind of being dragged through this very quick process of having to develop a universal language and understanding of sustainability data practices and understandings. And so the biggest challenge is, are we all speaking the same language on these things? Do we understand that when we've got a carbon emissions measurement, it's not a measurement, it's a model. You're not sat there on the chimney physically measuring what comes out. You're guessing what the emissions are based on best practices, based on science. So it's a model, and that does imply some variance, and it might change year on year, and it's not always going to go down. Some years it'll go up. So that's a big challenge ultimately.
Excellent. And there was a updated question, but I did want to add to Stefan, one of the things that they realized by using a low code is they could build this quickly with a very small team and really be able to focus on their IP and their sustainability, not on how it was going to be built and look. That's where the Mendix came and offer the quickness, but also flexibility per customer. But with that said, did you see the second part of the question?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that first time, Hans. So ultimately, if you require no custom requirements or just a small few custom requirements, we can get that rolled around in a couple of weeks. It's as quick as we can put together an order form, really, is the issue. If you want custom requirements, let's say you have particular emission factors you want using or particular methodologies you want using, or let's say you've got a reporting framework that you want us to implement into the disclosures app, you could be looking at 1 to 2 months. Let's say you have a big, hairy, audacious company, maybe not for you, this example, Hans, but for others, and you need it implementing and training in lots of different subsidiaries, and you want all a custom app from scratch, yeah, potentially 4 to 6 months. So we can move quite quickly on particular problems, and we're also getting quicker at it as we learn how to do it. So if we build that hairy, audacious model for one customer, we can then replicate that process over and over again. Also, I'd like to advise, so we do have a free version of Sustaira for everyone to play with, and a lot of the core functionality is there. So please feel free to have a look over on our website, on our platform section, sign up, have a play. And if you like it, please, happy to discuss your needs.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Rory. And looks like we're coming up on time anyway, so we appreciate everybody attending. I'm Doug Christofoli. If you have any questions about the Mendix ISV program, feel free to reach out to me through here or through LinkedIn or any other source, and the same with Rory. So again, we appreciate your time and Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.